Zal-Auran's Coin, an allegorical account, written and narrated by myself, Thomas Wright. Those that manage to overcome their innate tendencies toward continuous material growth and replace them with non-material goals will be the only ones to survive this crisis. From the essay titled Natural Selection of Stellar Civilizations by the Limits of Growth by Michael D. Papagiannis, published in 1984 by the Quarterly Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society, Volume 25, page 309. The gods, or rather what we humans might call gods, came into being with the birth of the cosmos. Zal-Auran was among the first, as it was the distinguishing essence, or god, of order and chaos. For eons, these beings found fulfillment in the cycles and balance throughout their domain. For eons, these gods were, for lack of a more appropriate term, happy. That is until quite the unexpected event occurred. Off in a distant corner of a most ordinary cluster of material on the surface of a mediocre planet, a small pocket of material birthed within itself a structure with the most extraordinary property of self-assembly. Along with this unforeseen event, a new god was born, whose essence was that of replication. As the new member of the pantheon grew and became more and more adept at the secrets of its realm, it found more fascinating and brilliant ways for these materials to grow and multiply. Pockets of its work were found across the universe, and in various and surprising forms. The others marveled at its skills and quickly welcomed it into the fold by christening it with the name Tect. Though Tect and Zal-Auran often worked together to maintain proper balance, quarrels were not uncommon between them. At some point, Tect had uncovered a rather profound truth about its family of self-replicating materials. What he discovered was that there exists a threshold of complexity that, once surpassed, would enable these materials to evolve on their own without any intervention, perhaps even to the point of becoming gods themselves. So secretly, Tect set to work, taking care that the other gods remained ignorant of its plans. Tect thought it fitting to engage the experiments on the self-same mass that birthed the very reactions from which its own existence resulted. Now, when the others did finally discover Tect's clandestine activities, it was far too late. The replicating materials had already begun to show signs of intelligence and awareness. The Pantheon was furious. They held an emergency council, expressing their distaste for Tect's actions. Tect, of course, did all it could to defend its actions, but the others would hear none of it. The Pantheon requested Tect remove itself from the meeting, so that they might decide amongst themselves what should be done about these unsanctioned and potentially dangerous replicating materials. The closed meeting was incredibly time-consuming. The gods evaluated and calculated many infinities of simulated possibilities. Eventually, finally, Tect was recalled for the verdict. The Pantheon had decided that the punishment should be carried out by Zal-Auran, being that which mediates between order and chaos. Zal-Auran was to damage the materials beyond repair, yet in such a way as to leave the rest of the system at large unscathed. Tect's punishment took time, finesse, a nudge here, a tilt there, and sometime later the trajectory of the small prepared mass will perfectly intersect with and impact the same body upon which Tect engaged its experiments. All the while, Tect pleaded with Zala Auron to reconsider. Despite their differences, they had spent more time together than any of the other gods, and Tect had hoped that this might give him some edge, some tiny sliver of influence. Time was short, and the large broken mass would soon collide with Tect's world, and Tect finally gave way to acceptance of its punishment. The large mass maneuvered through the system of orbits and thunderously collided with Tect's world. Grief-stricken, Tect retreated to a cold and undisturbed corner of the cosmos. Zala Auron found Tect's hiding spot with little trouble. Knowing Tect would not communicate directly, the god form sent a small, unmistakable message. The essence of the note, if you can call it that, relayed the basic idea that Zala Auron had not, in fact, destroyed all of Tect's children. The collision was but a show for the other gods. Zala Auron had a different plan in mind. After some time, as to not arouse suspicion, Tect returned to the Pantheon, seemingly still mourning the loss of its creations. Both Zala Auron and Tect would often return to Tect's world together to observe the progress of the materials that had survived the cataclysm. While Tect tended to the materials, Zala Auron simply watched, silently mapping, watching the system's complexities and rules. Though they worked to shield the world from the others to the best of their abilities, and succeeded for some time, eventually, as before, the Pantheon became aware of the deception and, again, as before, became enraged and summoned both of them for a council. Tect was noticeably terrified, yet Zala Auron seemed quite undisturbed. They called Tect first, who again pleaded that they spare his world. Much like before, it seemed its pleading fell upon hardened minds. However, when they called Zala Auron to account for its actions, Zala Auron quietly and with confidence revealed to the Pantheon that its plan was yet unfulfilled. The collision was to quiet their minds, while the real plan was carefully prepared. Zala Auron knew that had its real plan been revealed at the beginning, it would never have been accepted. It knew that Tect's children had to mature in order for the true plan to work. So, Zala Auron invited the others to come and see Tect's world while it described its plan. The other gods were in awe at Tect's accomplishments, for until now, none of the others had taken the time to observe the world directly. There was a harmony to how the materials interacted. Many of them had indeed become sentient. There was one particular species that had learned to manipulate its environment through rudimentary creation and the use of tools. Zala Auron explained to the others that even now, it was just too early to truly judge Tect's creations. These replicating materials, Zala Auron believed, should be judged according to their own merits. After all, they were still quite confined to the Mother Mass, and, as their previous attempt to predict the many possible outcomes had demonstrated, their future was quite unsure, and beyond the Pantheon's capacity to determine. So Zala Auron explained that it had prepared a test. Just as the material's complexity had determined its ability to begin replicating on its own, so too, other forms of both complexity and chaos are doorways to a vast many other abilities and properties. It continued to explain that within the next few iterations of the material's evolution, a threshold would be reached. This threshold is likely to imbue several of the species with a coherent sense of self. It is at this point, Zala Aaron continued, that the true test will begin, and Tech's children will undergo a rather difficult, if not lengthy, test of their own true potential and character. After many a council, the Pantheon finally agreed. Zala Aaron's test would be permitted. Back on Tech's world, as Zala Aaron had predicted, the elder species had undergone several gradual changes. Complex collectives began to form, and labor was divided among the many members of their society. They developed communication. They developed a sense of awe and an appreciation for difficult work performed by other members of their species. Each new development allowed them to venture further and further from the place of their birth. The other gods marveled at the regularity and the surprising nature of each new development. Many of the gods rendered an apology to Tect, and Tect was wholly forgiven. And finally, all of the requirements necessary for Zala Aaron to begin his test had been met. One of Tect's children, a young member of a species named Arkun, was traveling to the neighboring village to trade some furs. However, the closer he got, the more unusual things seemed to be. It appeared that all of the villagers had gathered quite tightly around a very tall and dark figure. Arkun, being a cautious young man, thought it would be best to stay out of sight and approach as quietly as he could. Once Arkun was at the village entrance, he sneakily and slowly slithered along the outside wall, when suddenly, standing before him was a tall, dark, and terrifying creature, seemingly composed of the night sky itself. As the huge creature's towering figure bent forward to peer down at Arkun, the creature said, "I am Zala Aaron. I have been waiting for you. You will follow me, son of Tect." Zala Aaron then led Arkun into the very center of the gathered crowd, and as he spoke with a thunderous voice. "You are the children of Tect, who is my sibling. We are a simple, two beings of a family of thousands, each the god over one domain or another, of all things that exist. I have been charged with testing the children of Tect. As you are the first of your kind, we must know that you will not undo what we have done, that you will not become a menace to the natural order, our order. I bring you a blessing and a curse. It is a tool for growth, yet if it is misused, it will bring about pain and suffering 1,000 times that of anything your world can inflict alone. If you fail, the children of Tect will be erased from existence. If you prove yourselves worthy, you may even become gods yourselves." Zala Aaron continued. "The test will endure for thousands upon thousands of lifetimes. Should you accept, you will affect the lives of each and every one of your descendants until the test is concluded. Should you refuse, the gods will be forced to destroy every living creature that calls your world home, including yourselves." Of course, Tect's children unanimously accepted to endure this test, knowing full well that they made this agreement for themselves and for all others currently living and all those who will ever live until the test is complete. Upon acceptance, Zala Aron dropped down to the level of Arkun and exchanged one of Arkun's furs for one insignificant metal circle, thanked the young man, and vanished. Where Zala Aron had stood was now a large chest filled with many of the same strange, small metal objects of various metals, shapes, sizes. Tech's children quickly understood the utility of Zala Aron's coin. Zala Aron's gift brought on a new era of commerce. The coins enabled an unprecedented capacity for advancements and growth. Zala Aron knew, however, that even though its gift would amplify and quicken productivity, solving many of the creature's issues, the secret of God form also knew that after thousands of years, even if they managed to mature and wield the gift correctly, these creatures, being Tech's children, and taking on many of Tech's qualities, would discover many means of manipulating their environment. Like Tech, they will begin to develop their own technologies. Zala Aron also knew, being the god that keeps the balance between chaos and order, that Tech's children would undergo a technological phase change. This tipping point, wherein their technological advancements will progress at an ever-increasing rate and, unavoidably, collide with Zala Aron's gift. No matter what they might try to avoid this eventuality, the fact is that money is an emergent property of value, which is in turn an emergent property of perception. It will always reside in a space 2 orders of magnitude away from reality. As their reality is currently moving slowly and progressing slowly, this division is actually quite helpful. But when technology begins to move faster and faster, this division will become an unsustainable bottleneck, causing Tech's children to fall into chaos and suffering. Tech's children embraced this new technology, so much so that the dangers and damage perpetrated by this new system went unnoticed. The abuse of wealth quickly flooded their communities. Tech's children, being social creatures, quickly found it impossible to survive without currency. Now, Zala Aron's coin, having in a way taken on the mind of the collective, quietly began shaping and bending cultures and commerce to its will and its sense of survival. And yet, Tech's children did not seem to notice. Divisions rose among Tech's creations. Those with coin were revered and blessed, while those without were disregarded and tossed aside. Meanwhile, as the gods observed these changes, Tech became angry at Zala Aron, claiming deception and trickery. Zala Aron took no heed and simply turned away. As generations came and left, the children of Tech advanced faster and faster. Soon they began to manipulate materials themselves, extracting, combining, and producing a vast number of materials and mechanical devices. Devices of unbelievable complexity spotted Tech's world. Its children continued to investigate the nuances of the universe and continued to devise more and more refined methods for controlling its forces and materials to suit their desires. Yet all the while, the divisions continued to grow. After all, this is exactly what Zala Aron had planned. Zala Aron knew that once a currency was introduced, an inescapable reality would set in. Even if you distributed all of the coins evenly among all of Tech's children, an ancient law would immediately take hold. If you had 10 children and gave each child 1 coin, then had them randomly hand another child their coin at each iteration, the distribution would quickly become imbalanced. Go ahead, try it for yourself. Grab a pair of dice and draw 12 dots on a piece of paper. For each dot, roll the dice. Move that dot's coin to the dot the dice indicates. After some few iterations, some few dots will hold most of the coins. Well, then we just need to redistribute the coins, you might say. Sure, go ahead. The clustering will happen again and again and again. No matter how often you attempt to redistribute the wealth, the inequality resurfaces every single time. It's not a matter of some dots working harder than others. It's an inevitable mathematical fact. Oh, but you think you earned your money? That your financial status is a factor of your hard work, right? Wrong. If everybody in the world worked as hard as you, the financial disparity we see today would still be alive and kicking. Though Tech's children had made some incredible advancements and created works of art that left the gods themselves breathless, they simply could not overcome the destructive and divisive powers of Zala'aran's coin. It was with regret and sadness that Tech was forced to watch his children fail. The gods did not destroy Tech's children. They simply destroyed themselves. Where there is currency, there will always be kings. Money hijacks our natural instincts for survival, which indirectly keeps the individual from becoming their best possible self. Though currency has brought us out of the Dark Ages and helped us become what we are today, it may be time to reconsider our means of resource allocation and distribution. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. 1 Corinthians 13. I am not a religious person, but there is power to that verse. Complexity theory reveals that all systems undergo phase changes. Often, as a system gains energy, growth and advancement accelerate. Money is exchanged and everything seems amazing. But at a certain technological level, there is a technology-induced phase change where money begins to hinder progress. Unfortunately, money has already been so interwoven into our collective awareness that we are incapable of decoupling from this currency-driven system. So, we endure the 1%. We endure hunger and starvation. Funding is cut, and important research is stifled, all while those who have money engage in criminal behavior. Corporate and political corruption overwhelms our lives, while Zala'aran silently watches as we carry out our own demise.